I'm a delivery driver for a nationwide courier service, and the overnight long-haul routes always fell to me. Didn't bother me much, helped me avoid traffic, and I liked the peacefulness of the dead of night. On this particular evening, my last stop took me way off the beaten path, far from any main roads or highways. The rural route consisted of endless twists and turns through pitch-black back roads, surrounded by looming trees on both sides, their twisted bare branches casting an eerie shadow across the cracked asphalt. As I drove further and further away from the last vestige of civilization, my headlights seemed to barely make a dent in the smothering darkness engulfing me. The night was calm, dead quiet except for the occasional hoot of an owl or rustle of leaves in the wind. I couldn't help but feel uneasy out here all alone. My delivery truck was a lone speck of light surrounded by the apocalyptic gloom. If something went wrong, I was on my own until daybreak at least. The hairs on the back of my neck stood at attention as billions of stars twinkled almost maliciously overhead through the canopy of naked trees. It was well past midnight as I white-knuckled the steering wheel, straining my eyes to make out any potential hazards in the road ahead illuminated by my high beams. That's when something caught my attention in the rearview mirror, a pair of lights in the far distance behind me. At first I thought nothing of it, assuming it was just a fellow late-night traveler. But as the miles rolled on, those lights never seemed to get any closer or farther away. They just remained in my mirror, an unsettling presence tailing me. An uneasy feeling began creeping up my spine. I hit the gas, desperate to put more distance between that mysterious vehicle and myself. But no matter how much I accelerated, those lights stayed glued in the mirror, matching my speed infuriatingly. My heart pounded as I made out the vague outlines of a car in the darkness behind me. But there was no driver visible through the windshield or side windows that I could see. It seemed to be driving itself, keeping an unmanned pursuit of me down this godforsaken road. Sweat beaded on my brow as a new terrifying thought took hold. What if it wasn't unmanned at all? What if something, or someone, was crouching down, hidden from my view but controlling that vehicle's every move, stalking me? I floored it, the engine roaring as I broke every speed limit in desperate hope of evading that abandoned stretch of highway and the mysterious pursuer toying with me. But those lights wouldn't be shaken, drawing ever closer now. Finally, up ahead I saw the bright glow of a gas station and made a desperate turn into the parking lot. As I slammed on the brakes and killed the engine, I watched in the side mirror as the haunting driverless car just kept going, disappearing into the night. With shaky legs, I went inside and approached the burly attendant. Did you see that car? The one with no driver? I sputtered breathlessly. The attendant's eyes went wide. The driverless death mobile? Yeah, I've seen it before. He leaned in close, his voice lowering to a raspy whisper. They say it's the restless spirit of a motorist who died in a horrible crash on these roads decades ago, searching endlessly for its next victims to join it for eternity. I got out of there as quickly as I could, head on a swivel the whole time. Once out on the main road, I felt my racing pulse slowly start to return to normal. I made my final delivery in a cold sweat, relaying the harrowing tale to the shocked homeowner. After that night, I vowed to never again take an assignment on those gloomy backwoods roads, no matter how lucrative the run. I'm convinced that something supernatural and evil is lurking out there in the darkness. Next time, it might not let me get away so easily. Growing up, I never imagined I'd end up as a delivery driver, but tough times fell on my family after my father passed away. With my mother's medical bills piling up, I had to drop out of college and find work wherever I could. That's how I ended up taking the night shift at a local pizza place. I'm a 20-year-old guy who should be worrying about finals and frat parties, not putting miles on my crappy Toyota working from 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. every night. But this was my harsh new reality after Dad's car accident. Most of my deliveries were pretty routine, to apartments around the college campus or residential neighborhoods. The money wasn't great, but it was enough to help Mom make ends meet. We were scraping by, just taking it one day at a time. Saturday nights were always the busiest and most profitable, with all the students ordering in, studying, or too drunk to cook themselves. This particular Saturday, I had been grinding it out since 6, the non-stop deliveries leaving me drained as midnight rolled around. It was just another night on the job for me. Little did I know the terrors that lay ahead of me that fateful evening. It was getting late, around 11 p.m., when I got the call for one last delivery to a remote rural area about 20 minutes outside of town. The guy on the other end gave me an address. Didn't think much of it at the time since I had never delivered out that way before, so I assumed it was just a normal delivery. I loaded up the steaming hot pizza into my beat-up old Toyota and headed out. As I drove further away from town, the roads got darker, narrower, the trees seeming to loom in closer with their gnarled branches. An unexplained sense of dread came over me. When I finally arrived at the address, it was an ancient, decrepit house. The roof caved in, windows busted out. Definitely seemed abandoned for years. In fact, I thought maybe I had the wrong address since the place looked uninhabited, but my GPS insisted this was it. Against my better judgment, I got out of the car and approached the front door, pizza in hand. As I raised my fist to knock, the door creaked open slightly. That's when I heard it. A bone-chilling, inhuman growl from somewhere inside the house. I dropped the pizza and ran for my life. Never drove so recklessly getting back into town. Of course, when I told my boss and the cops, they thought I was crazy, saying there were no houses at that address, only woods. To this day, I have no idea what manner of ungodly presence I disturbed out there. But you can sure as hell bet I'll never be a delivery driver again. Not after being tricked into going to a place I had never delivered to before, which turned out to be a nightmare. It wasn't until a few days later that some of my coworkers started telling me stories about that place, how it was an abandoned house out in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of weird legends surrounding it. Something about ritualistic cult activities, human sacrifices, gateways to hell. I'll never be able to unlearn those terrifying stories or unsee the horror I experienced at that godforsaken place. Whether I believe those far-fetched tales or not, I'm not sure. All I know is whatever was inside that house was real, and I never want to find out the truth behind it. This all happened years ago, but the memories are still burned into my mind like it was yesterday. It was just another routine delivery for me that night. I drove up to the modest 2-story house just before 8 p.m. with a bag of food from the Thai restaurant I worked at. The porch light was on, giving the place a welcoming glow. I grabbed the insulated bag and headed up the front walk. As I approached, the front door opened and a frazzled-looking woman greeted me with a tight smile. "Thanks so much," she said, handing me a $10 bill. I handed over the bag of fragrant curries and noodle dishes. "No problem, enjoy your meal," I responded with the usual customer service patter. She gave a small wave as I turned to head back to my car. Over the next few weeks, I ended up delivering to that same house a few more times. Each time it was the woman who answered, her light brown hair a bit disheveled, dark circles under her eyes. She never made much conversation beyond thanking me and grabbing the food. Just a stressed-out customer grabbing a quick meal, I figured. Then one night about a month later, I turned onto the street and immediately knew something was off. Police cars lined the road, lights flashing, surrounding that same little house. My stomach dropped as I saw the body bag being wheeled out on a stretcher. The next day, the news was all over it. A grisly murder scene. The woman's husband had been killed in a particularly brutal way. The wife was the prime suspect after her frantic 911 call once she discovered the body. But I knew the truth. Each time I had delivered, she had that same tightly wound look of sheer panic and exhaustion. Whatever happened in that house, she had been living with the buildup for a long time before reaching her breaking point. I quit my delivery job soon after. I just couldn't shake the thought that I had unknowingly been a minor player in that woman's tragic descent into violence simply by showing up at her door with food weeks before it all went down. Maybe if I had paid more attention, made more of an effort, I could have changed things. Now, whenever I pass by that house, I avert my eyes, haunted by the memories of those mundane deliveries turned into the preludes to a grotesque murder. She was eventually arrested, tried, and convicted of the murder. But throughout the entire legal process, she never offered any explanation for her actions that night. No allegations of abuse, no cries of temporary insanity, no justifications whatsoever. She simply stayed silent, a blank stare on her face, as if she herself couldn't comprehend the violent monster she had become behind those suburban walls. Her deafening silence only compounded the tragedy, leaving myself and others in the community to speculate endlessly about what could drive someone to such unspeakable depravity against their own spouse. To this day, her motive remains an impenetrable mystery, locked away along with whatever demons ultimately led her down that fatal path of no return. I never imagined I would come face to face with a real serial killer. You see that kind of thing glamorized on TV shows and in movies, but you never truly expect to have a personal experience with such darkness. I was just a food delivery guy trying to make an honest living, not someone put on this earth to deal with murderers. And yet, there I was, an unsuspecting witness to the unraveling of someone's brutal psychological breakdown. It's the kind of thing that scars you for life and makes you question how well you really know the people around you.